Hello, everyone. Today is Thursday, January 6th, 2022. And this is the first office hours of the year 2022 of Cluster API provider Azure. Happy New Year, everyone. Hope you all had a good break. This is going to be a light meeting. There aren't too many agenda items, but let's just go around and see what people have. All right, so I don't see anyone new, so I'm going to skip over the welcome new members part. And David, you have the first item. Go ahead.
All right, I will try to keep it relatively quick. VMSS, equivalent to like what is it? Autoscale groups in AWS is introducing a new orchestration pattern to VMSS, and it's called VMSS Flexible. And that would allow us to basically take any VM that's built in Azure and add it to a scale set. Basically, it breaks the VM model out from the larger orchestration model, because before in the uniform VMSS, which is the VMSS implementation that they're there today, the VM, the actual virtual machine, is like embedded into the resource model there. And it has some implications on how the infrastructure is spun up and where it lives in each rack and that kind of thing. So VMSS Flex introduces behaviors that separate out the VMs from the actual orchestration model and should provide us with significant performance increases for disk activities, attaching to networks, delete, create. There are some API changes, so the orchestration model isn't going to be completely the same, but there's a spike out there. I opened up a WIP PR, and it's kind of sat out for a little bit, so it's grown stale, but you can see the rough differences. I'm going to try to get that pulled in. So that not that with PR, but probably restart it and take what I learned from there and put it into a new PR, close this one out, clean it up, get something out there that's ready for review. Any questions? We could run uniform, and this is also meant to replace availability sets at some point. So the way we run machine deployments, control planes, we could look at this as how we run all of stuff instead of just some things are availability sets, some things are scale sets. So it could be helpful.
Oh, sorry, I was muted. I have a question for you, David. So you say we could use it for all things, but is using VMSS Flex to back Azure machines as opposed to Azure machine pools, is that a consideration? Is that something that would be possible?
Yeah, so that's kind of what I was alluding to, is we could create machines and then add them. So let's imagine we have machine deployment. And in CAPI, a machine gets created, infrastructure gets created for that machine. So we have a named machine, but we also know the group. So we could take that named machine and add it to a VMSS Flex orchestrator and really not have it do any orchestration other than just like availability set stuff.
Yeah, I guess I was thinking about it more the other way around, where you put like everything is an Azure machine. In that case, Azure machine pool kind of becomes maybe less useful. And then you say like, what kind of like instance is this? Is this particular machine a scale set or is it a VM? And then that is like a configurable property of Azure machine, and they can all be in the same set, like in the same Flex set.
Ooh, that's interesting. Yeah, I don't know. We should probably explore that. I hadn't thought about it from that perspective.
I don't
maybe
know
we
if
should
it
game
would
that
work.
up.
This is just me spitballing from 2 seconds of thinking about it, so I don't know. But I think
It would be really nice to make some more, have some more uniformity across how we deploy compute.
yeah, I think Juan Lee would be a good person to talk to. He doesn't attend the meeting very often, but I know he's thought about this stuff a bit. Yeah. Matt, did you have another question?
Yeah, I was just curious, like, I think you probably told us in the past, but I wasn't paying attention. What is the state of Flex? I mean, is it still pre-release or is it rolled out anywhere?
So it's rolled out. We can use it now. I think it might be like public preview. I don't know if it's gone GA,
Yeah.
but it's not feature flagged or anything like that.
But eventually it'll be available everywhere, like not eventually, but within maybe a year or so.
Yeah, there are a handful of not a handful, like probably 2 or 3 APIs that we would like to have that we don't have right now. And those are kind of batched APIs. So like, hey, I want to batch, re-image a bunch of instances. Right now, you'd have to call that individually, and that isn't the the best way to do it. Like you want to call Azure with batch of instance IDs and say, hey, go and update these. So they're working on that. It's just they're untangling this big ball of yarn to make it easier to work with across the VM provider as well as the scale set provider.
And is there a link in the PR somewhere for lazy people like me to look at the API? I'm curious how it's different.
You know what? I didn't link the API.
I can Google. I was just asking.
I just linked to the docs in this doc. I think the API should be in here somewhere.
Oh, it's probably right in here. Yeah, cool.
Awesome.
Another question. Have you talked to the cloud provider folks by any chance? Do you know what they're thinking?
In fact, I just started a thread with Penfei from Cloud Provider as well as the AKS team. They have not started testing with this yet. So what my intention is to get the infrastructure spun up, point them at a branch and have them start using it to spin up test environments and figure out the bits that work and don't work, because there's going to be, the APIs have changed significantly. Like when you ask for an instance ID from VMSS, previously you would just give it the integer ID for that instance, and VMSS would return that. VMSS actually returns the ID of the VM now. So you don't get an instance ID back. You actually get a ID to that VM in Azure. So like the URI to that VM. So that's where the model has now broken apart, and VMSS doesn't embed the VMs, but in fact serves you back URIs to jump to that VM. So there's going to be significant changes in APIs in Cloud Provider, likely CSI, likely, all of the things.
Makes sense.
Anyone have any other questions?
Cool. If not, Cheyenne, go ahead.
Yeah, so I've opened a PR for Azure Cluster Refactoring. So basically what this PR does is like decouple all the common fields. So before that, a little bit of context on why we need this PR. So to integrate CAPI's cluster class, we needed to like separate out the common fields from Azure Cluster, because the Azure Cluster template struct would only have the common fields that are shared across clusters. So this PR basically like removes all the things, all the fields that can be shared across multiple Azure clusters, and creates a separate struct, and then embeds into the main Azure cluster struct. So the idea is like when we create an Azure cluster template, we could just like embed the common struct instead of like duplicating all the fields. So Cecile has already reviewed it, and we had like a discussion on the naming conventions. So I like to have like more eyes on that because it's like affecting some important piece of code.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. And just in general, I think there are quite a few PRs in the queue right now that are just waiting for review. So try to get through them, but we've been getting more contributions than we have reviewers. So trying to catch up a bit. Does anyone have any questions about that PR? About the refactor? Great. And I don't know if you mentioned that yet, I think you did, but this is to support cluster class. So probably something we'll want to try to get in the next minor release. Right. Any other topics or anything else before we close? Okay, if not, I'll just finish with what I wanted to bring up at the end.
One second. If just before we quit, is there anything left to do for the kept the PR for ignition support and Flatcar support?
Yeah, so that PR depends on the 1.1 CAPI release, which is not out yet. And so we don't want to merge anything that it doesn't exist in CAPI.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So as soon as we merge CAPI 1.1, we can merge that. It's just waiting.
All right. Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks.
Yep. No worries. Yeah, so I just wanted to ask if this meeting time is still working for everyone. I know priorities change and like times change, from one year to the other. So this is probably not the best place to ask, like Matt pointed out, because it's a bias group since we're here. But I'll ask in Slack and maybe create a doodle to see what the best time is for everyone, and try to see if we can keep being as inclusive as possible. Cool. All right. Well, good seeing you all, and Happy New Year. And see you in Slack.
Bye.
Thank you, Cecile. Bye-bye, everybody.